listening to the Recovered Life Show.
Awesome. 2 segments. The first segment, Kristina, I wanted to kind of set this up because you found this. It was a great article, and it's how exercise can help you beat addiction. And I know a lot of people are big exercise junkies that are in recovery. So I want to talk about that. Where did you find this article?
It's in Very Well Mind, and they have an addiction section, and I love to check it out because not only do they bring up very, very good topics that we can discuss, but they also bring up from a medical standpoint exactly what is the next treatment. And although exercise is not a singular treatment for addiction, they are now starting the studies that show, and I think a lot of us know that, right? We know that, but this is one more way to put this tool in your toolbox. Part of my morning wake up is a treadmill. But it was very interesting because they're seeing how it really helps from all addictions too, withdrawals. It helps with withdrawal symptoms, but mind you, if you are thinking about withdrawing from alcohol, you still want to make sure you get help. It's still one of the most dangerous withdrawals that are out there. But it also adds like that extra padding, because we were discussing about padding in your recovery program.
Yes.
And we've got all of the endorphins and everything that come with it, but just committing that to yourself. I mean, I would tell you this, there are some days where I happen to work out in my pajamas, right? Because I don't even want one extra step before I'm willing to get on the treadmill. I know, I look pretty silly. I'll have to post it. So it's pretty funny, usually black socks and PJs. But what that does is take all of the challenges out of it, because all I'm doing is putting on my tennis shoes. And I know from Atomic Habits, are you familiar with that book? Amazing
I'm not.
Oh, amazing book where he breaks down the science of habits. It's one of those tools. And so when you start exercising, the goal is to get through the first 2 minutes and have that become the habit, right? Getting up, putting on your tennis shoes. So even if I only have 10 minutes, I will get on that treadmill every day, because that is my key.
I will tell you, you're way more dedicated than I am. I have to say, but there is hope for me, because I noticed right under cannabis, in between cannabis withdrawal and heroin withdrawal, there's caffeine withdrawal.
You can do it.
There is hope for me. Now, here's the thing that I found that was interesting on this. This looks like it's actually medically reviewed.
Yes, it is.
By Rachel Goldman, PhD. And also it was written by Elizabeth Hartney. Yeah. And they do go into the whole medical thing of this. And I think it's, you know, I think I wanted to break this up here because I want to ask you 2 things about this, because I have to tell you, I've been incorporating walking into my life, just leaving and walking.
Yes.
Right. A couple of times a day. And it has really helped my attitude.
So much.
It really has. Right. So, but it looks like the whole first part of this article is all about withdrawal, right? Withdrawal. So people in early recovery. And I know a lot of people in early recovery listen to us. And I think some of these things, when you're talking about cannabis, cocaine, and meth, especially, right?
You wouldn't think of it that way.
These are long-term withdrawals. Like, you know, you can have months of withdrawing. So it's interesting, you know, working this into a recovery, recovery program, right? Right.
And they're starting to use it in rehab facilities and all kinds of things. Because first they talk about the fact that you know, talk therapy, group therapy, peer-to-peer support is incredibly important, but it can be enhanced if you add an exercise regime. And it can not only help you with your withdrawals, it actually helps repair your neurology.
Yeah.
And it aids in moving that along. So it's something, it's another point in the favor of exercise. And I'll tell you, when I first withdrew, and I've withdrawn for several things: alcohol, nicotine, people, and even with people it works, right? You know, and even caffeine. With people it works. Okay. Even with people it works, and caffeine. Well,
that's good to know.
And you know, it's very difficult to think about that. Let's say you're in the throes of either physical withdrawals or emotional, you know, turmoil, because you're making a huge change in your life, and you call somebody up and they say, "Go take a walk." But that literally, there's now medical proof, and there's going to be more since this has been medically reviewed, where they'll start actually adding this into a system. So I'm pretty sure, You tell me if you agree with this, Damon. I'm pretty sure that even if you aren't in early recovery, it's going to help no matter what. It's one of my tenets.
Yeah, I think in early recovery, I think it's really great. But you know what it says here about later on in the article, which I wanted to definitely discuss, was the exercise for relapse prevention.
Yes.
And
isn't that massive?
That I think is interesting. This, you know, we know that there's a lot that's happening in the brain when we come to cravings, right? Like, and I think they're just tapping on that now. It's interesting, you know, 12-step has discussed, you know, sugar and I don't really remember 12-step discussing exercise as much. I mean, go for a walk or I never really heard that. It was always kind of sit in a chair, eat some cake.
Yes.
Right. Some stale birthday cake, but which, hey, that works too, right?
Cookies,
like
caffeine, and nicotine, right? Cookies, caffeine, and nicotine. That was what was presented when I first got sober, and they used it as almost like a like eat a Twizzlers, you know, before you pick up a cigarette.
And I know, I know that, I know definitely for sure that, you know, they've done a lot of research about sugar and about lifestyle and soda and all that other stuff when it comes to craving. That's more and more, I mean, it's pointing more and more to that's not a good idea, right? But something's happening chemically. And they kind of understand it a little bit, but this whole idea of this dopamine that you get from exercise and this also rhythmic kind of, I want to say like meditation kind of thing, like a treadmill or something like that. I do believe it's very helpful.
Well, so what happens is not even, you know, endorphins, you know, they get a lot of play, but there's something called the BDNF network. It's your default mode. And when you meditate or do something that's very good for you physically, it actually sets your body up to do a full repair. And they have done a lot of medical studies on that, you know, why meditation is important, why exercise is important. So even if you are just starting out, look, we're not talking about, you know, what is that thing called? The stuff where they throw tires over and everything. I can't think of it right now. They have these big, huge gyms.
Yeah.
CrossFit.
Yeah.
See, I blocked it out of my head. I never want to look at that. And so even if we're not saying go out and do that, you don't have to bench press all kinds of things. It's about getting your body moving. And then that BDNF protein will be secreted or something like that. I'm not a doctor, but I've read a lot about it. And with my son, exercise is a huge deal for him. So not only does it help your nervous system, not only does it repair your neurological system, it actually teaches your body and gives you a bigger reserve. So take that, move your body, move along.
Well, here's the only thing. And it has actually, you know, are there, you know, people are listening to this are saying, hey, are there negatives about working out and fitness and stuff like this? And if you go back, we've done several exercises, several episodes, about you know, about exercise and about, you know, about just physical health, eating, things like that, about how it really helps with recovery, with early recovery,
and the chemicals.
Also with, and the chemicals, and also with just addiction relapse prevention. Right. But it does say here in the article about limits of exercise as addiction treatment. And here is one thing that I found, like I was thinking, is there a negative about this? But I have had this experience where I have either worked with people that are in early recovery or known people in my peer group that they'll trade one addiction for another addiction, right? So they were somebody who had a really unhealthy lifestyle. They get sober, they're sober for a month, and then they decide that they're replacing their whole life with protein shakes and working out 24 hours a day.
Exactly. Right? And I'm glad you brought that up, because the one thing we want to make sure that's very clear is there is, you know, exercise bulimia. There are issues with the eating disorder, disordered eating, that need to be in check. That's why you always want to be within a group with a coach or a sponsor. If you're going the 12-step route, you want somebody to understand what your recovery program has included, because there are definitely times when I was, you know, dancing with disordered eating and really bad body dysmorphia, where it was actually hurting myself. So we're not saying that. I want to make sure that that's clear, because if, you know, this is not permission to go and act out in your disordered eating. It is very, very careful put that you have a plan that you've thought through that's at your fitness level. And I do believe it has to be in check. There has to be a balance. 4 hours.
Yeah, because you
at the
don't
gym.
want to train. You don't want to, just real quick, you don't want to trade one addiction for another addiction. And that,
No.
you know, that has been some of the comments about 12-step groups too. Is like, oh, you're just now
Of course.
being addicted to 12-step groups or whatever. And I get that. Like, I understand. But you know what? That's stopping you from the behavior so you can have long-term recovery. So if you have to go to 50 meetings a day, you have to go to 50 meetings a day, right? Now,
Right.
this is a little different because I know, I didn't even know that this is a thing, but it is, that people get addicted. It's almost like an eating disorder. They get addicted to this pattern of working out.
Well, and if it's preventing you from living your life, you know, unless you're a athlete, a professional athlete, or in those areas, and believe me, they struggle with disordered eating as well. But unless you're doing that, you know, and it really needs to be a portion of your day, not your whole day.
Yeah.
And that's why I brought up the working out in my PJs, just so everybody was clear. I'm not showing up at a gym 7 days a week and doing that. I have a balanced program that works for me, and it is watched over by professionals so they can tell me, yes, you're doing this well. I mean, we need everybody in early recovery and throughout your recovery to check in with a medical professional and see where you are physically before you start.
Yes. And I think, you know, the thing is that one of the things is that sometimes people come in very beat up.
Yes.
And in really bad, especially with other drugs like, you know, meth and all this. I've seen people come in, heroin and stuff, and and even alcohol, because alcohol is so destructive to your heart and all this stuff, that they come in and they're really not in a place where they could do this. And they feel that they're going to do all or nothing. And this is the whole thing about the whole all or nothing thing. And this is very black and white thinking. And this is the thing that gets people in trouble, I think. But what I love about what you were talking about, how you just had right from your PJs onto the treadmill or whatever, is this buffer. I talk a lot about in recovery about your recovery being like a brake pad.
Okay.
And you don't want to be metal to metal.
No, you
right?
don't.
You need a buffer. You need a buffer, because when something happens, you have to be able to have a buffer to be able to learn how to react to it in a healthy way, right? Like, so somebody's going to challenge you, be mad at you. It's not going to work out at work, or something's going to happen in your personal life or whatever. And if you're metal to metal all the time, you're just, eventually you're going to crash the car, right? That's the way that I look at it.
Right. They're going to fail. And if you're also, I'm going to bring up even another part of, if you're going through a very, emotional recovery, let's say you're working on grief, you're doing inner child work, you really have to be talking with somebody to decide. We're talking about just moving your body, but perhaps it's actually punishing for you to get on that treadmill and go, 6.0 for 45 minutes. That isn't fun either. I always tell my clients, and I borrowed this from Al-Anon, and I've said it here before, you have to infuse activities in your day that are for fun and for free. So if hitting a tennis ball back and forth with your friend is exercise and it's for just fun, then you get a double bonus. But,
absolutely.
Yeah. But make sure that you're out there moving.
Absolutely. I think this is a really great episode, little segment here, because, so many people are put with, you got to start working out. You got to start doing this. You got to start doing this. And I think
it goes in
everything in moderation, especially in early recovery. I think you just don't want to turn into a exercise psycho.
No.
You know what I mean? You've seen those people, right? You know what I mean? It's just like they go from abusing alcohol and drugs to abusing the gym.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
And
avoiding
everything
life
is about, avoiding life. You could avoid life with the
all
gym just as much.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
This
is great. I mean, this is great. What's your big takeaway from this, though? Kristina, you're really good at wrapping things up. What's your big takeaway from this article? What did you learn?
That they weren't lying to me when they said you had to exercise, that it is so vital to somebody's recovery program, and it's like supersizing your recovery program. And so, outside of what we discussed about it being hurtful, if you're in a certain position with your physicality or your emotional state, exercise is always going to be a good move. And you got to do it like you take your vitamins and drink your water.
Words to live by. Kristina Dennis, I'm going to do that. I'm going to actually start being more
put down the
disciplined on my
coffee.
walks. I'm not a power lifter, but I am going to start doing the walks.
Yeah, and put down the coffee.
Great article. I'm so glad that you found that.